Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta-vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Hare Oh Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Gaura Hari Bol Nitai Gaura Hari Bol Oh Jaya Sachinandan Jaya Gaura Hari Sachinandan Jaya Gaura Hari Jaya Sachinandan Jaya Gaura Hari Sachinandan Jaya Gaura He 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 Jai Shri Shri Guru Garanga Ganabha Giri Hari Radha Vinod Vihari Ju Ki Jai Sachinandana Gaura Hari Ki Jai Nityananda Prabhu Ki Jai Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Amasto Tarasata Shishimat Srila Bhakti Vedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Amasto Tarasata Shishimat Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Nitya Lila Pravishta Amasto Tarasata Shishimat Srila Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Goswami Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Jagat Guru Nitya Lila Pravishta Amasto Tarasata Shishimat Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai Jai Mahabhagavat Srila Gaura Kishodas Babaji Maharaj Ki Jai Jai Saptam Goswami Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur Ki Jai Rupanuga Guru Varga Ki Jai Ananta Koda Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premanandi Om Agina Timirandasya Gyananjala Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmaya Shri Guruve Namaha Guruve Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Taralaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tarabhaktaya Namo Namaha Yam Pravajantamana Petyam Apeti Krityam Dvaipaino Viraha Katra Ajuava Putre Titam Mayatayo Taravo Benidustam Sarvabhutam Pridimanato. I first of all offer millions and millions of Dandavat pranams unto the lotus feet of my most beloved Gurudev, Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasara Shishimat Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj. And the same again millions and millions of times unto the lotus feet of our beloved Nitya Lila Pravishta Om Asto Tarasara Shishimat Srila Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And unto the lotus feet of our most beloved Srila Bhakti Vinod Thakur, Namo Bhakti Vinodaya, Satchidananda Namane, Gaura Shakti Swarapaya, Rupanuga Varayate, and all the Vaishnava and Vaishnavi devotees of the Lord, and our illustrious Rupanuga Guru Vargya, I offer all my Dandavat pranams to all of you. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. So, continuing with our study of Jiva Tattva. So, we're doing the last 4 verses of the Falshruti. Jaivadama Patashe Shura Bhakti Hoy Jaivadharma na padile kabe bhakti noy.
One who reads Jaivadharma with faithful deliberation will surely attain Shuddha Bhakti. But one who does not read Jaivadharma can never attain Bhakti.
Falshruti means the fruit of hearing. So the fruit of hearing is that we can attain Bhakti. And if you don't read Jaivadharma, you cannot attain Shuddha Bhakti, because the conceptions in Jaivadharma are nothing different from the conceptions of Satchinandan and Gaura Hari. So if you have some aversion to Jaivadharma, that means you have aversion to the precepts, and these are the most faithful, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur has given it in such a deliberate fashion, especially this Das Mula that we're scrolling through at the moment. We'll speak when we come to it, but very succinctly, very clearly, it's going through the process, how to connect with the mercy of Satchinandan Gaura Hari, very, very clearly.
Rupanuga Abhiman Pathe Drida Hoy Jaivadharma Vimukake Dharma Hinokai. Faithfully reading Jaivadharma will surely strengthen one's Abhiman as Rupanuga, follower of Sri Rupa Goswami. One who is averse to reading Jaivadharma is certainly devoid of religious principles.
Yes, very clear. Java Jivane Jai Pade Jaivadharma Bhaktiman Se Jnana Vrita Jnana Karma.
One who faithfully reads Jaivadharma throughout his entire life will be endowed with bhakti. and will surely realize the futility of Gyan and Karma.
Just like Sanyavilasita Sunyam, Jnana Karma Anavritam. This is not our path, Jnana and Karma. Most of the Shastras previously to Srila Vedavyas writing his Srimad Bhagavatam were principally based on Gyan Kand or Karma Kand, because that's what the general people wanted to hear. But Mahaprabhu has come to give something practically previously unpracticed until he came with Bhakti Ras, with this Rupanuga conception from Rupa Goswami, this Raganuga conception. This was practically not even there on the map prior to the advent of Mahaprabhu.
Krishnera Amala Seva Lavi Sayanara Seva Sukhe Magne Rahi Sada Krishna Para. Such a man, being fully devoted to Shri Radha Krishna Yugal Kishore and having attained their Amal Prem Seva, remains forever merged in the bliss of such immaculate loving service.
Yes, so this is the conclusion, to be absorbed in the immaculate loving service of Sri Radha, not in Gyan, not in karma, but in devotional service. This is the principle, because the mind can very easily be tricked into considering that, oh yes, with knowledge, people will listen to me, I can give so much nice discourse, etc. I can analyze the scriptures. Yes, this must be the right path. Some illumination is happening in my consciousness. But no, without devotion, devotional service, without this precedent. So we've come into our 16th chapter, but just to look back on where we've come from in this Dasamula section, this Amnaya Praha. So we established the Praman in the 13th chapter very clearly. And then Tattvam Harim Iha Paramam. We established that Krishna is that supreme person. We even, in that 13th chapter, enumerated the qualities, the 64 qualities of Krishna, and then the 60 qualities of Narayan, the 55 qualities of Brahma and Shiva, etc., and the 50 qualities of the Jiva. Very clear distinction, placing Krishna as that supreme personality, that Tattvam Harim Iha Paramam. Krishna is the supreme. That's the first prameya. The second, Sarva Shaktim. This is described in the 14th chapter, and we went extensively through that. And the first half was establishing these Shaktis that are manifesting from Krishna, and how ultimately Swarup Shakti is manifesting the three functions, the Sandhini, Sangvit, and Hladini Shaktis, which are acting on the Chit Shakti and the Jiva Shakti and the Maya Shakti. These three groups of personalities that are going to be manifested from, or how the Jiva is interacting with the Chit Shakti and the Jiva Shakti and the Maya Shakti, which actually comes back to a description that we've already been through in the first 12 chapters of Sambandha Gyan. Basically, these first 12 chapters that we studied in this Jaiva Dharma are mostly dealing with the external aspect, with the social interactions, Smarta Brahmins, Muslims, that chapter 7, Chandidas, asking about this material world, etc. It's mostly all, and then Vaishnava Das, his preaching, etc. But it's mostly addressing the material aspect. This is all about Sambandha Gyan, these first 12 chapters. And now we're coming into this. This is much more internal. This is much more the spiritual precepts. We call them the ontological truths. Yes, Tattva Gyan, which is different from the first 12 chapters. The first 12 chapters were very much knowledge also, Sambandha Gyan, but of a different mood. And now we're coming into the thick of actually what is spiritual life all about. So this Sarva Shaktim, that it is the Shakti that is manifesting everything. And then towards the end of that chapter, Brajanath, he's asking, Well, if Shakti is doing everything, what does Krishna do? If Shakti is all the manifestation just going on by Shakti, then where is Krishna in the picture? So Babaji, he answers, he says, Krishna has two aspects: freedom, this swatantra tantrata, right? And this is swatantrata. This means freedom. Freedom is something in a sense that you have no boundaries externally. And the second quality that Krishna has is free will. There's a distinction. That's called sva icha mayita. That means he has desires. Icha means desires. So these are the two qualities of Krishna. It's quite fascinating to appreciate. So Krishna has this supreme independence in the form of complete freedom in the whole cosmic creation. No one else has the same freedom that Krishna has. Not Sri Radhika also. Sri Radhika is depending on Krishna. She is the Shakti that's depending on Krishna. Krishna is completely independent from the Shakti. And then Krishna has completely free will to act as he pleases. Because it's saying in the Jiva Tattva that we read, that I'll read it again in a minute, but it's saying that anyone who is under the control of some agent has to suffer to some degree. So that agent is even Krishna in the form of the gopis. They have to suffer separation. They have to suffer so many difficulties, etc. But Krishna, he doesn't have to suffer that. He's not under any agent. So we should see, to understand Shakti, we have to understand Shaktiman. So this was that 14th chapter was about. Then the 15th chapter, and then also in that 14th chapter, this Rasabdim, the Rasa Vichar, was actually touched upon. So we've got two prameyas in the 14th chapter. Then the 15th chapter was Vibhinamsa, about the ontological position of the Jiva, where he manifested from. He's come originally from the Chit Shakti, and the Jiva Shakti has come from the Chit Shakti. We are coming from a very pure, the most purest place. We're atomic particles coming from the Chit Shakti, manifesting in this world through the Jiva Shakti, through the mercy of Baladev in his form of Sankarshan. So we went through all that Jiva Tattva aspect of how the Jiva manifests in this world. This is Vibhinamsa Tattva. And also in that Vibhinamsa Tattva, it's describing very distinctly in the last few pages the extreme difference between Ishvara and the Jiva. It gives a whole paragraph on the similarities, and then it gives the extreme difference of Ishvara as the supreme controller. This is what the sadhak has to deeply, deeply, deeply appreciate, his absolute insignificance in relationship to Krishna as far as tattva is concerned. But when the affection for Krishna is awakened in the heart, that affection ultimately, like with Radhika, has the ability to control Krishna in a rasa. But that's another dimension, more or less. So just see where we've come so far. We've gone through Krishna, establishing him as the supreme person. Then we've gone through establishing Shakti as basically Swarup Shakti. And then we've come through this Rasabdim aspect. And then we've come through Vibhinamsa Tattva. So these are the tattvas where we've come from. And previously, as I just said briefly, those first 12 chapters were establishing a platform so that we could digest these truths. That was a platform of Sambandha Gyan. What is these three vastus? There is Krishna, Maya, and the Jiva. And what is the relationship between these three? This was actually given in the very first chapter. And then it continued through in different forms in all the next chapters. But this is the ground platform for Sambandha Gyan. So this is where we've come from. So now we're doing the Chajivan Prakriti Kalibitam, Kabalitam. This is the jivas that are swallowed by Maya. So this is the section that we're up to now. swallowed by Maya. And Brajanath doesn't like this idea. He's objecting all the time. Why is Krishna making it this way? And Babaji is answering absolutely beautifully. Where are we?
362.
Huh?
362 last 14.
Yeah, we'll read one paragraph up from there. 162, we'll read in the middle. The independent jiva is a beloved servant of Krishna. Yes, we're independent, but we're a beloved. Beloved means I'm attracted to Krishna. Krishna means all attractive. We've gone through the Krishna Tattva. The jiva is by nature attracted to Krishna. So Krishna is his beloved. And when that consciousness wakes up, then all the jiva's difficulties are going to be purified and cease, because he will wake up to that blissful relationship with Krishna, his eternal relationship with Krishna. The independent jiva is a beloved servant of Krishna, and thus Krishna is kind and compassionate towards him, even if he seems to be suffering adhyatmic, adhibhautik, adhidevik, these three miseries. Why is he suffering these three miseries? Because he's turned away from Krishna. How is Krishna supposed to bring the jiva back? How is he supposed to do that? It's like a teacher. You can't just give sugar and spice to the students. Sometimes you have to slap them. They don't listen. And especially in the conditioned souls, we just keep on moving into the... I was speaking to someone yesterday from the States who was visiting there, and they had been like 10 years before, and now they were seeing the deplorable state of so many cities where there were homeless people and, you know, involved with drugs and so on like that, and the sort of degradation. And we see from the one country of America how grossly much they were into sense gratification. Lock, stock, and barrel, just like nothing else existed. How can we get a bigger car? How can we get more roads? How can we get faster machines? And just pushing this mood. And now that has become exhausted, actually. What sort of reaction? What can Krishna do when someone is heading in a direction like that? They won't listen, because they've been poisoned by the taste of material sense enjoyment. So then that has to be purified by getting a shocking taste of the real poison of that and how it affects the consciousness and makes you completely miserable. Bhaktivinoda Thakur's already said this. He says when the misery becomes most intense, then what did he say? Discrimination. The mood of discrimination, the mood of inquiry. Why am I suffering so much? So a man who was working happily in the world has now become, has to live on the street, homeless. His job has gone and everything like that because of various economic things. So now he's in a position where he can really examine the nature of what he's doing. Previously, when he was just rushing to work, getting his money every week, spending completely intoxicated by the material energy. But now, all of a sudden, he has to stop. And he's just sitting on the street with nothing. So this is mercy. He gets a chance to discriminate and ask the question. And this hopefully is when the devotees will be there with a book. Not money or food, but a book. This is the most important thing. I can remember in Australia, we would distribute, and the Christians, they would come and give free food to all the beggars, and a cigarette and a cup of coffee. They'd actually give them a meat pie, a cigarette, and a cup of coffee. That's what they would actually give to the beggars. But the devotees would come after them and give them a book, because the book is going to guide them out of their plight. The free food, etc., will keep them for a day or two from dying, but the book will give them eternal life if they have the discrimination to read it. So it's a scientific process that the Lord is working. It all makes sense. There's nothing to be thinking. If I wasn't a devotee, if I hadn't heard about these, I would think, my God, what's happening in the world? It's going so bad, so degraded. Practically, I would just want to suicide because I would think there was nothing else. It would be just so degraded. But with devotional service, we understand the mechanics of actually what's going on around us. It's falling apart. Same in India, the degradation, drinking, alcohol, the government exploiting the people. The independent jiva is a beloved servant of Krishna, and thus Krishna is kind and compassionate towards him. Yes, this is his compassion, like a teacher, like Prabhupada describes, like a child who wants to touch the fire. What does the mother do? She takes the hand, puts it into the fire. Ow! Child will never in his life again try to play with fire. So hopefully we will learn this. We just described that the jiva is like on the anvil of the material world, being beaten with the hammers of material existence to teach us these lessons, to wake us up. Wake us up to the positive alternative, not to the jnani alternative of just understanding it and then saying, oh yes, now I want bliss. Not that mukti path, but actually waking up that devotional path, the sweetness of Krishna. Seeing the misfortune of the jiva as he misuses his independence and becomes attached to Maya. Yes, I've said so many times, it's our attachment to Maya. Not that Maya is an inferior energy. I am made of superior energy. Maya can't touch me. I am superior. But it's my independent decision to grab Maya. I choose to grab Maya. I choose to grab these material pleasures myself. I make up my own mind to do that with my independence. Maya can't do that, but I choose to do it. So it's my attachment. So Thakur was using his words very clearly, seeing the misfortune of the jivas as he misuses his independence and becomes attached to Maya. He chases after him, weeping and weeping, and appears in the material world to deliver him. Sri Krishna, the ocean of compassion, his heart melting with mercy for the jivas, manifests his achintya lila in the material world, thinking that his appearance will enable the jiva to see his nectarian pastimes. And what greater nectarian pastimes than the crest jewel of all pastimes, the Ras Lila. So we have the Ras Lila. It's not like we're living in that time 5,000 years ago, but when we read Srimad Bhagavatam, when we read the Rasa Panchadhiya, when we read the commentary of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, etc., Jiva Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, my Gurudev, we can see they'll give us some vision to actually picture how beautiful was this rasa, how beautiful are the moods, how beautiful is the love that the gopis have for Krishna, this nirmala, this absolutely pure love that the gopis have for Krishna. So pure. They leave everything. Ma babajan durjara geha shrinkala. They leave their whole homes and family. Sangvishchaya. They leave everything behind for Krishna. Their hearts are only wanting to be with Krishna. So this example is there of their union with Krishna in such a tremendous display of joy. And the whole night of Lord Brahma, 4,320,000,000 years. That's the length of the night of Lord Brahma. And Krishna is dancing with his eternal gopis in that time. We see bliss and all the descriptions. Ras Lila doesn't just mean the dance, it means also the Jal Krida, water pastimes, it means the picnic pastimes, it means taking honey mead, stealing Krishna's flute, bathing in Radhakund. This is all Ras Lila. Krishna has performed all these Leelas throughout the 8-fold periods of the day, starting from Nishanta Lila, Pratal Lila, Purvana Lila, Madhyana Lila, Apurvana Lila, Syan Lila, Pradosh Lila, Ratri Lila. All these Leelas in the day are extensively described. We have all these descriptions, and it's our choice whether we immerse ourselves in these descriptions during this very, very brief life we have. We have a brief life, but we have the options to pack it full of absorption in Krishna's sweet pastimes. He's given us that opportunity. That's in the first instance. Now, the second instance is However, the jiva does not understand the truth about Krishna's pastimes, even after being showered by so much mercy. So Krishna then descends in Sri Navadvip in the form of Guru. So then he descends again. How much mercy do we want? Because Brajanatha said, can't Krishna have thought of some other way to do this? And Babaji is explaining, how much has Krishna done? How much can we appreciate that he's done, especially when he comes in the form of Guru? He stays here in Navadvip for 24 years with a mood of Shyam Ras, actually, most of the time. And towards the end, when the Sankirtan Ras is building in Srivasangam, then that Radha Bhav begins to manifest. And then it truly manifests down in Puri. This is when he goes into, because separation and meeting, these two dynamics are always there within the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. Without separation, there cannot be full-blown union. It's like Lakshmi Devi, she sits on the chest of Lord Narayan, but why does she want to go to Vrindavan? There's no separation for Lakshmi Devi. She's on the chest all the time, like Swakya practically. But in Parakya, it's not like that. Parakya, this special bhav of Parakya, how amazing that Krishna has arranged everything like this. It's just phenomenal how he's arranged to demonstrate the nature of pure love, because this contemplation on these loving pastimes is what's going to put us in touch with the absolute spiritual reality, which we've already discussed is love alone. There is nothing else except this love. That is from the Chit Shakti. That is in the pure Chit Jagat, the pure spiritual world. We've already discussed that. And that is our destiny. That is our home. Krishna then descends in Sri Navadvip in the form of Guru. He personally describes the supreme process of chanting his name, form, qualities, and pastimes, and personally instructs and inspires the jivas to take to the path by practicing it himself. He does it himself. What sort of teacher is this? He's not just teaching from a pulpit. He's not just teaching from some lecture base. He's doing it himself. We go to the Gambhira. We see that tiny little room. It was only big enough for him to lie across diagonally. Mahaprabhu was practically 7 foot tall. He was very large arms, etc. When he lay down, he practically took up all the space in the room. So much so that Govinda one day couldn't even get in to massage him. He practically takes up the entire, and he lived in that room for 18 years. So he's teaching us, don't look for material facility. That's not where the bliss is. The bliss is in the internal absorption and contemplation and practice. That's where the bliss is. Why should we waste any energy on trying to fix our material situation? It's so insignificant, really. And every time we try to fix it, what's it doing? It's distracting from the internal practice. When we try to make some elaborate external arrangement, well, I want to live here because it's near the sea, or I want to do this, all these external arrangements for our living, the jiva becomes absorbed in these things. And sometimes he puts the name of Krishna on top of it. Oh, I want to have a nice farm community with all devotees and a nice temple, and then I'm going to be materially happy. And then he goes there. I lived on a farming community for so many years. So much trouble and strife. Every day, people arguing this problem, that problem, all the time. If you're not practicing focused Krishna consciousness, that's the objective. Did Mahaprabhu go and live on a nice, sweet community where everything was happy families and all, cheery, chummy, everything, going to nice little devotee school for the kids and everything? Is this the object of life, Varnashram? This was rejected in the Rai Ramananda Sangha. The first thing that was rejected. Prabhupada wanted to establish Varnashram because he's so compassionate and merciful. He wanted to give that for the jivas because we need it. We need to have that initial place. But when we have that teaching, we should know to try to just follow the teachings of Mahaprabhu. There's not enough time now. Things are actually really closing. Physically, we'll see. He personally describes the supreme process of chanting his name. Yes, just by giving us his name. Namna Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. The form of his name. Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha is the murti of himself. What is it? Puna Shuddho Nitya Mukto. Vinatvam Nami Naminaha. That name and Krishna are not different. Previously, the name was there in different ages previously for millions of years, but it was never empowered. It's only empowered when Mahaprabhu advents. He empowers the name. All we have to simply do is vibrate the holy name regularly with focused attention. And then all these truths, it'll make a strong receptacle by chanting. So when Krishna chooses to benedict us with some transcendental state of consciousness, we're able to maintain it because we've practiced the chanting. If you're not practicing the chanting, those realizations will just come in one ear and out the other. You won't have the adhikar to hold them. But by the chanting, they will give us the strength to hold these realizations and then to digest them and then to realize them forever. Nameful qualities and pastimes, and personally instructs and inspires the jivas to take to this path by practice it himself. Baba, how can you accuse Krishna of being at fault in any way when he is so merciful? His mercy is unlimited. It's unlimited. It has no limits to it. Because you take the holy name and you enter beautifully into the moods of the gopis by taking this holy name. You can enter the moods of the gopis. You can hear their hearts beating in attraction and affection to Krishna. Then we begin to follow these ragatmikas. Then we become a true raganuga bhakta. His mercy is unlimited, but our misfortune is lamentable. If we don't pick it up, that is completely lamentable. And whose fault is it that we don't pick it up? It's our fault. This is what I've said repeatedly. This appreciation of responsibility. This really must be picked up. It's a big one. Because many times, especially in the Western world, devotees have been abused with all sorts of pharmaceutical drugs, you know, intoxicating drugs, all different things like that. They tend to weaken the consciousness where we think, oh, I just have to depend on someone else for my, like in the Western world, the government gives you money, you know, they support, so it makes you more baby-minded. I don't have to really do anything. The government's going to give me a handout. And we start to have this mood of dependence on this mood of dependence on other people is actually an offense. It's described as one of the offenses in the Vaishnava Hari, what's it called? The Sanatana Goswamis, Hari Vilas. This, and it's Bhakti Vilas, Hari Bhakti Vilas. This is described how dependence on other people for welfare, for support, for anything like this will weaken you. It's also saying in Bhagavatam, it says the same thing. Like if an acharya or a king is completely dependent on other people for his moving around, this weakens him. Actually, he can't even do anything by himself. He's always depending on other people. It's a weakness. So we should try to be independently capable of walking through this world in this life, not depending on anyone, not depending on a society. Like in a big society, you can start to depend on the society. Actually, the society likes you to depend on them in the same way the demonic governments like you to depend on them also, because it weakens you. So we must be aware of these simple truths. Rajanath, now this is where we came to today. Is Maya Shakti the cause of our misfortune then? Would the jivas have had to suffer like this if the omnipotent and omniscient Sri Krishna had kept Maya away from them? Good question. What is this Maya? This Maya is the maidservant of Krishna. We'll hear what Babaji says. Babaji, Maya is a reflected transformation of Krishna's internal potency, Swarup Shakti. That's who she is. There's Yoga Maya and there's Mahamaya. Yoga Maya works throughout the eternal spiritual realm, manifesting all the desires of Krishna for his pleasure. Sri Radhika ultimately is that Yoga Maya. Purnamasi Devi, Subhadra, she comes in Dwarka, etc. These different manifestations, personalities, who will arrange circumstances to please Krishna, all for his pleasure. And this is all under the potency of Swarup Shakti, Sri Radha. So here, it's the same. The jivas, imagine if the jivas could get their way in this world. How demonic would they become? They would just drift right away from Krishna altogether. So Maya Devi, thankfully, is there just to check us, ultimately. Swarup Shakti. And it is like a fiery furnace where the jivas who are not qualified for Krishna's seva are chastised and made fit for the spiritual world. So all the apparent sufferings that we have to go through, just like at the time of death, if we read in the Garuda Purana, have you read the Garuda Purana? Yes, it's shocking. It's really, really hair-raising when you read about the Vaitarani River and all the punishments to be stuck onto this thorny cotton tree, etc. I mean, just absolutely horrific. Huh?
It is explained.
Yes, deeply, graphically. I'll lend you a copy. It's very, very helpful. It's very helpful indeed. I was sharing with one devotee how important, because at this particular time in history, when it seems like civilization is breaking down, many things that we were accustomed to 5-10 years ago are not there anymore. You can't just freely roam around the planet like you could previously. It's becoming more and more difficult. So many people will contemplate suicide. Many people will, with drug abuse, with pharmaceutical abuse, etc. It'll become so overwhelming. So if you've read this Garuda Purana, you know what awaits you on the other side. So it's very, very helpful. In every single Indian's home, they have this Garuda Purana. And when any person leaves their bodies, then they'll read from this Garuda Purana and offer the pind, offer the various rice balls, etc., to ease the journey of the departed soul, if he's not purely connected with Krishna. If he's connected with Krishna, that won't be the case. But if you're not connected, this is what will happen. Remind me to lend you a copy.
Actually, that should be read before the person dies.
Yes.
And not after the death.
Yes, it's best to read before the person dies.
So that he will not commit that mistakes.
Yes, so that he becomes afraid. That sort of fear is helpful. It's like a teacher. A teacher sometimes has to make the student fearful. Otherwise, he's not going to perform properly. He should. You're a teacher. When you're teaching your mathematics, you sometimes have to put some fear. Otherwise, my Gurudev very much used this tool. He would terrify us, make us stand up and speak in front of so many people. I would never have learned so many verses, unless it was the intimidation of my Gurudev forcing me to do this and entering into all these different truths. I wouldn't have done it. But he forced us by making us stand up publicly and speak. Time and time and time again, for so many years, we had to speak on these topics. Let me start again. Maya is a reflected transformation of Krishna's internal potency, Swarup Shakti. So we know what that means. And it is like a fiery furnace where the jivas who are not qualified for Krishna's seva are chastised and made fit for the spiritual world. Maya is Krishna's maid servant. In order to purify the jivas who have turned against Krishna, she punishes them, gives appropriate therapy. She transforms their consciousness. She doesn't just beat us like in a jail which doesn't have any sort of proper training.
Again, it's a mercy.
It's mercy, yes, therapy, and purifies them. The infinitesimal has forgotten that he is an eternal servant of Krishna. And for this offense, it's this offense, Maya, taking the form of a witch, Pischachi, punishes him. So we have these two Pischachi, we've said in the last few days, Bhukti, Mukti, Spriha Yavat, Pischachi, Kriti, Vartate, Taravat, Bhakti, Sukasyasya, what is it? Sukasyasya, Karatam, Abhyudayo Bhavet, Sukasyatra, Karatam, Abhyudayo Bhavet. These two witches, Bhukti and Mukti, these are like two witches. They're an attraction from Maya Devi. Yes, practice this path and become liberated. Then you can enjoy. You can enjoy. You can be the enjoyer. You can be like God again. This is our subtle desire. Maya, taking the form of a witch, Pischachi, punishes him. This material world is like a jail, and Maya is the jailer who imprisons strange jivas and punishes them. A king constructs a prison for the benefit of his subjects. And in the same way, Bhagavan has shown his immense mercy towards the jivas by making this prison-like material world and appointing Maya as its custodian. Custodian means the person who in charge of the jail. She keeps us in the jail, right? As long as we're attracted to Maya, we're going to be in the jail. Think about it. As long as there's any attraction to anything to facilitate the pleasure of the material body, even eating, sleeping, yoga, this is pleasure for the body. The body is getting some pleasure from this. This is the subtle aspect of Maya Devi. But we have to work a balance in our lives with this. We have to sleep. We have to eat. Some of us, old folks, have to do yoga. But to some degree, everything has to be balanced, cautionary. And if we do these things knowing that Maya Devi is trying to make this very attractive for me to get me away from my practice of Krishna, just like Jad Bharat. What was the subtlest thing that caught Jad Bharat? It was such a sweet mood, a mood of compassion that Jad Bharat had. He saw the baby deer. He knew the baby deer had no mother. He rescued the baby deer. Then he should have just let it be, but he didn't. He started to, his mood of compassion, oh, let me feed it a little more. He wasn't controlling his mind sufficiently.
Attachment.
Yes, attachment, exactly. This is the Maya. Attachment to Maya. Do we become attached to yoga?
No.
If I can't perform my yoga, am I going to be so miserable like that? So we have to learn how to be detached from everything in this world. At the time of death, Pramodananda Saraswati, he writes this beautiful poem. He says, oh brother, when you close your eyes in death, where will your wife, family, loving children all be? Where will your power over others be? Where will your good qualities be? All of these things that we collect during our lives, where will they be at the time of death? Nowhere. They won't be anywhere. So putting dependence on this, like I just said previously, this mood of dependence on others or dependent on my own material abilities, these are not going to be strengthening at the time of leaving this body. At the time of leaving this body, what will be most important is my ability to focus on Hari Nam, Krishna, his form, his qualities, his name, his attributes, all these things, to focus, his pastimes in particular. If I can remember this at the time of death, I have made a success of my life. And if I'm not remembering this, my whole life, whatever I've built, as far as reputation, wealth, followers, etc., will all just be zero. Rajanath, if this material world is a prison, it also requires some suitable shackles. What are they? I always think whenever I read this, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's crafting this script. So he's writing the questions so he can answer. Bhaktivinoda Thakur wants to say, what are the shackles in this world? So Brajanath is asking this perfect question. Babaji, Maya incarcerates the offensive jivas. Incarcerates means captures them, puts them in. Offensive jivas with 3 types of shackles. Those made of goodness. It's like you have everything in life. You're a vegetarian, you're chanting Hare Krishna even. You have a little farmhouse, you have your cow, you have all the aspects of the mode of goodness in your life. But still, you can become attached to that and bound by that. The shackle ultimately is our attachment to it. This is what we have to appreciate. Those made of goodness, sattva gun. Those made of passion, rajagun, and those made of ignorance, tamagun. These fetters bind the jiva, whether his inclination is tamasic, rajasic, or even sattvic. Because in sattva gun, that's like in the swagaloka. In swaga, they're in sattva gun, definitely. The most dharmic personalities in sattva gun. When they transgress dharma, they always have problem. They have to perform their dharmic duties. Vayudev has to blow. Suryadev has to shine. Agni Dev has to incinerate. Indra has to pour the rain. This is their dharmic duties they have to perform. And they are living in the mode of goodness. Their lives are sattvic. It'll be explained. Shackles may be made of different metals such as gold, silver, and iron, but that makes no difference to the pain of being bound by them. Brajanath, how can the shackles of Maya bind the atomic conscious jivas? Babaji, objects of this material world cannot touch spiritual objects. However, as soon as the jiva develops the conception that he is an enjoyer of Maya, his atomic spiritual form is covered by the subtle body made of the false ego. We've analyzed this, gone right through this very clearly. It's like the jiva is completely pure, but he's come into this world with a choice because he's tatashta. He can go to the spiritual or he can indulge in the material. He has the capacity to do that. So if he chooses to go into the material, he's going to be bound by it. So it's all our fault again. It's no one else's responsibility. This is what Babaji is trying to impress. Develops the conception that he is an enjoyer of Maya, his atomic spiritual form is covered by the subtle body made of false ego. So first of all, it starts in the subtle. That's mind, intelligence, and false ego. These 3 subtle elements we've discussed already. So those 3 subtle elements. And then the soul, I've said before, it gives the power. In English, it's called attorney. When you give the power of attorney to the mind can, because it has to have independence. We have to be living in a mood of independence because it's that independence that's going to bring us to Krishna, loving Krishna. So the soul is giving the mind independence how to act. And if it independently wants to try and exploit this material world, it can go ahead and do it at its own cost. That is how the shackles of Maya bind his legs. The jivas, having a sattvic ego, reside in the higher planets and are called devatas. Their legs are bound by sattvic shackles made of gold. The rajasic jivas have a mixture of the propensities of the devas and the human beings, and they are confined in rajasic shackles made of silver. And the tamasic jivas, who are mad to taste Jad Ananda, bliss derived from dull matter, are bound in tamasic iron shackles. That's just like what I described before about these homeless people indulging in drugs and everything. They have brought their existence down to hell. They have actually made their existence like hell. They are living in hell even though they're on this planet. Their life is hell. They're preparing for the lower regions. But if one wise person, if he has a semblance, a little bit of intelligence left and starts to question, why is this happening to me? then he can be saved. As soon as he thinks like that, this is the amazing miracle of Krishna. As soon as he just thinks that thought, there will be someone come to him to bring him to a place where he can hear this knowledge. Instantly that will happen. The devotees are all over the planet. They will immediately try to relieve that person. Once the jivas are bound in these shackles, they cannot leave the prison. Even though they suffer various types of miseries, they remain in captivity. Why? Because they themselves are holding on. They can't be released because they're the ones holding. They can be released when they realize they have the keys to release themselves. The keys are in the jiva's pocket. We have the ability to release ourselves right now. But we're so illusioned and enamored and attracted and attached to the material world, we refuse to let it go. Therefore, these fetters will keep us bound, grossly and subtly. This subtle mind, intelligence, and false ego. Even the gross senses may be fully under control. But if the mind and the false ego and intelligence hasn't turned sufficiently to Krishna with all his energy, he's going to have some attraction for this world. Therefore, he's still going to be bound. So we'll carry on tomorrow. What sort of karma activities do the jivas perform while confined in Maya's prison? So we'll discuss that tomorrow. This chapter is so graphic. I mean, I don't think anyone comes close to describing these topics as clearly as Bhaktivinoda Thakur has done. We can read all of these things in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and many of the commentaries in the Bhagavatam are actually describing these things, but Bhaktivinoda Thakur has condensed everything. Appreciate this is only 40 chapters, but it's really condensed. That's why we have to go through it quite slowly, sentence by sentence, word by word, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur has had the, like in sutra, like in the Brahma Sutras, they're compact into single, like 1-2 lines, sutra, and it means like so many meanings are there. So similarly in Jivadharma, it's just so intensely packed. So Jivadharma is very special Shastra. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Jivadharma ki jai, Anantakota Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Vanchakalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhavevacha, Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavyo Namaha. Is it off?